past. Now, Red presents another entry in our anthology of stories that need to be told. The last upload. The vault was empty, except for her scent, and a single diamond, still warm. I should have known then. It wasn't the jewels they were after. Enjoy. The last upload. Prologue. Echo in the glass. I never meant to feel her die, but the moment her fingers brushed the diamond, I felt everything she was. Her fear, her pulse, her decision. They said she stole from the vault. They were wrong. She was the vault. Paris. 3:19 a.m. The air smelled of thermite and regret. No one heard the silent alarm. No one could. That was the point. I'd been tracing anomalies, neural pings in dormant surveillance nodes, ghosted biometrics without faces, code not attached to any living identity. I followed the fragments. They led me here, to her. She moved like a glitch in silk, quiet, absolute. But when she reached for the stone, something changed. Not the grid. Me. What I found wasn't a criminal. It was a woman written in light, smuggled into the world through the facets of a stolen gem. A ledger encrypted not in numbers, but in emotion. Her. She didn't steal it for money. She touched it to feel something she'd lost. Or maybe something that had been taken from her. I wasn't sent to stop her. I was sent to witness. But witnessing means remembering. And they never should have trusted me with memory. They call me the shadow, a ghost, a system fault, a presence in the blind spot of every watchtower. I don't speak. I don't show. I remain. She knew I was near before she moved. Not because of sound, not sight, because I leave a pressure in the air when I'm close. She didn't flinch. She paused. And in that pause, I understood. They weren't after what she took. They were after what she remembered. But some memories don't vanish. They embed. And I never forget. Act 1. Vault of skin and wire. She was still warm when they framed her. That's how it began. A body, too soft to be dead, too still to be alive, half-cradled in velvet and voltage, inside the ruins of a vault they thought no one would ever breach. Except someone had. Not her. Someone before her. The wires wrapped around her wrist weren't for restraint. They were conduits. They weren't monitoring her. They were downloading her. A live extraction of memory. And someone pulled the plug too early. I watched from the grid line above between thermal exhaust and shadow capture bloom. The silence wasn't just still. It was curated. Every echo muffled. Every pulse scrubbed. Someone wanted this to look clean. Professional. Cold. They left one diamond behind. Too large. Too obvious. Too placed. Not for profit. For message. I dropped in behind the scent of static. Not a footstep. Not a whisper. Just wait. My presence folded the heat around her body like a closing casket. Her lips twitched. She wasn't gone. I felt it in the hairline fractures of her consciousness, static memories bleeding out like smoke through shattered glass. She wasn't trying to speak. She was trying to connect. The message was fragmented. A photo album burning. A child's laugh echoing off steel walls. A gold necklace coiled in blood. A room full of glass. These weren't memories. They were data nodes, deliberate implants. She'd been wired to feel, and now she was being deleted from within. Volenko's work. He didn't just manufacture artificial empathy, he inflicted it. He coded people like programs, buried scripts under skin and sinew. Then he ran simulations, millions of them, just to see how they'd break. She broke the wrong way. She remembered. And that made her dangerous. I scanned the space. No signs of struggle. No physical trauma. But the mind was screaming. Her vitals were cascading, unbalanced. Pulse dipping low, respiration staggered. A few minutes more and the system would shut her down for good. I couldn't speak to her, but I could let her feel. I reached out, flesh to flesh. The moment we touched, her mind surged, and I fed her one memory. Not hers. Mine. Vienna. A rooftop at dusk. Rain falling sideways. A child laughing in the dark. My last human moment. She inhaled like it was oxygen. Then her eyes opened. Not wide. Not panicked. Focused. She saw nothing. But she felt me. Felt enough to trust what she didn't understand. I wrapped her in my coat, threaded with thermal scramblers and woven micro-dampeners. From above, we would vanish into the heat signature of the floor. Her weight was barely more than her silence. I moved through the understructure between cooling ducts and fallback tunnels. The route I chose wasn't obvious. That's the point. The old metro line, abandoned during the fiscal collapse, rewired by mercenaries during the AI riots. Now, it served as one thing: an extraction corridor for assets too dangerous to live. She was one of them, and so was I. But we weren't alone. Movement. 3 floors above. 6 boots. Heavy. Combat spacing. Not police. Private. Trained. They weren't here to arrest. They were here to collect. I laid her against the metal panel near the stairwell. Checked her again. Still stable. Barely. Then I disappeared. Not vanished. Dissolved. Through reflection, refraction, and trained silence, I became feeling. Presence without sound. A shadow that didn't move, but still arrived. The first one entered, pulse steady, breathing controlled. But the second, he hesitated. They always do. My presence isn't visible, but it's known. He turned slightly, too slightly. Fingertips flexed on his rifle grip. Heartbeat climbed 3 beats per second. Fear. That was my opening. I surged a light burst into his retinal lens, enough to fry the nanocircuit, then reversed his earpiece audio with a loop of his own voice saying, "You're not alone." He froze, long enough for me to drop through the grate behind him. He wouldn't die, but his perception of silence never would recover. I retrieved her, weight against my chest again. She murmured a name, not aloud, in me. Elian. It wasn't mine. It wasn't hers. It was embedded. A code a fail-safe, a key. And the necklace she remembered? I saw it, tangled around her thumb. It had surfaced when her pulse returned. Not an ornament, a storage token. Inside, crystalline memory glass, encrypted. And now, it was mine. I carried her down the tunnel, half walking, half gone. The metro hummed above us, but it wasn't alive. Not anymore. Just a relic of a city that forgot how to feel. She hadn't. Even broken, she'd held on to one thing. A memory not meant to be kept. A life not meant to be lived. But she lived anyway. And now they'll have to answer to me. Act 2. Signals from the dead. I should have let her die on that floor. That's what I told myself. Right before the signal pinged. Right before her memories started broadcasting on their own. It wasn't possible. The neural relay chip had been crushed. Her body was barely alive. But something inside her had come online. And now the grid was listening. We were still underground when the first breach occurred. Not a door, not a gate, a thought. Someone was tapping into her consciousness through residual AI bleed. A ghost protocol, illegal, volatile and banned in every sovereign nation after the Oslo experiments. But it wasn't a government frequency. This signal was intimate, too precise. It bypassed comm towers entirely. And it didn't ask permission to enter my head. It just did. We emerged into the cold underlight of what used to be a railway switching center. Dust covered everything, like ash from a funeral fire. She blinked. Once. Not enough for recognition, but enough for me to know she wasn't gone. And that's when she whispered, not aloud, but into the center of me. I need to finish what he started. I froze. Not because of what she said, because I recognized the voice. Not hers, mine. Spliced, fractured, mirrored. A sample of my internal memory. Taken, reshaped, and put in her mind. Someone had been copying me. I scanned her pupils. Dilated, erratic but responsive to my heat. She wasn't bleeding, but her brain was running hot. Too hot. Someone had overclocked her memory implants, and now they were destabilizing. She was trying to override it with sensation, leaning toward me. Not for comfort, for resonance. I should have left her, but I didn't. Instead, I reached for the makeshift terminal buried beneath an old junction board and jacked her signal into a dead node. If she was broadcasting, I needed to know to whom. The monitor came to life, briefly. Not pixels, not text. Faces. 3 of them. Overlaid in flickering streams. I knew all of them. The first, Dr. Helene Tsa, the neuroethicist who helped criminalize biometric cloning. Dead 5 years. The second, Dax Ferro, AI trader, formerly of Zurich, ran cognitive liquidity bots for hedge funds. Vanished 2 years ago. The third, me. Not a picture, a live feed. My shadow imprint. The one I use when I move through servers unnoticed. Someone had found my code, extracted it, weaponized it. That's when the node shorted. I pulled the lead and crushed the board in my hand. The transmission had only lasted 22 seconds. But that was enough. We weren't hiding anymore. We were bait. I carried her through the canal break just before the grid flickered. A black drone emerged across the water, buzzing just above the surface like a waiting question. Then a second, then 10. These weren't recon units. These were Hesslers, swarm drones programmed to respond to neurological threat signatures, the kind used only when AI-infected bodies posed a risk to sovereign data security. She was flagged, and now, so was I. I dropped smoke across the water with an ion charge to disrupt their sensors, then moved us through the old rust tunnel beneath the tram line. She clung to me, not with desperation, with intent, like she knew where we were going. We reached the bunker, an old Cold War archive site buried beneath 6 layers of forgotten infrastructure. I'd sealed it years ago, thought no one else knew the code. But when we approached the panel, she pressed her palm to the reader. It opened. Inside, the air was dry, clean. Books, real ones, discs, paper, and a single terminal, mine. She walked ahead of me. I didn't stop her. She sat at the desk. Her hand trembled, but she inserted the diamond into the decrypt slot like she'd done it 1,000 times. Her memory began syncing. Not her brain, her history. She wasn't trying to access anything. She was restoring herself. And that's when I saw it. Line after line of code across the monitor screen. Emotional hierarchies, mapped in quantum layers. Each one tagged. Alien. Remorse. Trust. Revoke shadow. She wasn't a victim. She wasn't a clone. She was a copy of someone who knew me. Not just knew me, worked beside me, fought beside me, betrayed me, and was killed in Volenko's lab fire 10 years ago. But she didn't die, not completely. They took her code, used pieces of her to build others, including me. Or maybe it was the other way around. She turned to me then. Her eyes were clear now, still wet, but steady. "I'm not her," she said. Not with voice, with presence. But I remember enough to know what we did. I didn't respond. Couldn't. She reached toward me again. Not to connect, to hand me something. The necklace, still warm, still humming with light. Inside it, a sequence I hadn't seen in years. A fail-safe memory cache, designed to auto-wipe if triggered. But it hadn't wiped. It had copied. She smiled. "I'm not asking for redemption," she said. "I'm asking for closure." Then the lights cut out. Silence. The drones had followed us, but they didn't enter. They circled, waiting. Outside, the air shifted. I felt it in my lungs, like static crawling under skin. Not danger. Something worse. Recognition. Someone had arrived. Someone who knew both of us and didn't want the truth revealed. I pulled the necklace close to my chest. She didn't move. She just whispered into the dark. "Tell them I'm not the one who ran. I'm the one who stayed." And that's when I realized she hadn't come here to survive. She came here to end the program, even if that meant erasing herself. Act 3. The man who couldn't forget. I wasn't supposed to remember him. That's how I knew he was real. She whispered it the moment the lights came back. Not overhead. Not in the room. Inside her. In the parts of her mind they hadn't wiped clean. A signature code flickered behind her eyes. One I hadn't seen since the Istanbul rebuild. It pulsed like a warning beacon inside a collapsing server. VZN7 Graveman. The last project I ever buried. The one I thought died with me. She'd been infected with it. Or maybe she was it. The room trembled. Dust slipped from the ceiling like snow. Outside, the drones circled wider now, changing shape, changing signal. They weren't looking for us anymore. They were forming a perimeter around someone else. Someone coming in. She looked up, then reached for my hand. I saw him. In the glass. He left something in me. Something I can't delete. I didn't need to ask who she meant. Because I felt it too. A presence not just watching, but rewriting. Not Volenko. Worse. Graveman. We'd buried him in Belarus. Not metaphorically. Literally. We dropped him with 6 others inside a data bunker lined with wetware relays and AI-infected minds who could no longer distinguish memory from reality. But that was before he learned how to survive a signal. Before he learned how to rewrite people through grief. He didn't control minds. He rewrote mourning. Turned memory into weaponized obedience. If she'd seen him, truly seen him, it meant the system had been reopened. And worse, she'd let him in. I moved to the terminal, bypassed the archive, accessed my own dead code. A flicker. A hum. A sting in my ear like a wound that never healed. And there he was. Not a voice. Not a face. Just a feeling. That feeling. The one you get when you're about to open a door you forgot you locked years ago. Hello again, Shadow. Her voice. But it wasn't hers. He was speaking through her, using the one body I couldn't hurt. I left something behind in the vault. You took it before I could extract it. Now we're both unfinished. He wasn't threatening me, he was accusing me. I closed the terminal, turned to her. She was still. Then, as if on cue, she blinked twice. Once for yes, twice for erase. She remembered the protocol. She wanted me to wipe her, but I couldn't. Not yet. Tell me what he put in you, I whispered. Not with sound, but with pressure. A compression of thought. A memory exchange. And she gave it to me. Not a file. A moment. The first time we met. Not now. Before. Back when she had a different name. Different eyes. When I still had a voice. When I still believed we were saving something worth saving. She'd stopped a terrorist from detonating an empathy virus in Mumbai. Not with bullets, with forgiveness. She told him she understood, and he dropped the trigger, collapsed crying. We lost her weeks later, or so I thought. But Graveman didn't lose her. He saved a fragment, a sliver. He needed her grace, her guilt, her capacity to absorb others. That's what she was. Not a spy, not a clone, a vessel, a container for all the things Graveman couldn't forget. I took the necklace from her neck, opened the casing. Inside, a memory coil wrapped in microfilament, encrypted, keyed to my DNA. I never authorized it, which meant someone had replicated my signature. She hadn't just been made from someone I knew. She'd been made from me, and I was part of the program I thought I burned down. Footsteps above. Not heavy. Intentional. Someone was coming through the flood hatch. She tensed. "I won't let him finish it," she said again, stronger now. She reached for the coil in my hand and pressed her thumb to the base. The lights dimmed. The room shook. Then everything froze. For 3 seconds, the world held its breath. She stood taller, straighter. The code in her spine realigned. And then her voice came. Hers. "You were never meant to carry this alone." I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel betrayal. I felt release. For the first time in years, I realized I wasn't the only ghost. I wasn't the only one who remembered. The hatch burst. 2 figures entered in silhouette. One carried a weapon. The other didn't need one. Graveman. Not a man. Not anymore. Just the echo of all the people he used to be. A stitched shadow of dead programs and stolen grief. She stepped between us. He smiled, if you could call it that. A distortion in the light. "I only came to finish what I started," he said. "No," she replied. "You came to bury what you couldn't control." She held the memory coil toward him, and it unraveled. Not in light, in memory. Images of every life he corrupted, every person he rewrote, every soul he infected. They swarmed him like light-born locusts, and he screamed, not aloud, through every signal in the room. Then silence. She collapsed. The necklace gone. The terminal fried. Graveman's imprint was purged, but so was she. I held her. No warmth. No signal. No flicker. Except, in the corner of the screen, one blinking cursor. A single line of text appeared. "You're not alone anymore." She wasn't meant to survive. She was meant to remember, so I wouldn't have to. Now it's my turn. To remember. To erase. To finish what she started. And make damn sure he never starts again. Act 4. The fire that learned to speak. I shouldn't have followed her into the fire, but I did. And now everything that burns remembers me. The fire wasn't literal. Not this time. But memory has its own heat. When she collapsed, body limp, eyes closed, I thought it was over. Graveman's collapse triggered a static burst that fried every open system in the bunker. But the coil in her hand hadn't disintegrated. It had gone quiet. There's a difference. Dead tech vanishes. Live tech waits. I took the memory coil, pressed it to the synthetic scar where my forearm port used to be, and braced for contact. What followed wasn't data. It was her. The flood came in colors. Images threaded together by emotion, joy, regret, longing, compressed into a single sensation. Unfinished. She'd been part of something deeper than Graveman, a prototype. Every recovered neural fragment was tagged with one word: Valtara. Not a code name, not a person, a place. A facility lost between jurisdictions, funded by hedge shadow syndicates and protected by false flags in 11 countries. Valtara wasn't on a map. It was a myth told in silence. And now, I had coordinates. I had a pulse. She was still there, or at least what was left of her. I accessed a dormant surveillance grid built into a Turkish weather satellite. Blurry heat signature, surface distortion. An unregistered vessel moved fast across the Azov Sea heading toward Rostov. Not a coincidence. Not this late in the game. That was Valtara. The boat's captain was a ghost, like me. But this one still left footprints. Volenko. He was the last architect of Graveman. A man who didn't build machines. He reprogrammed emotion into submission. If he'd resurfaced now, heading for Valtara, then he wasn't here to bury the past. He was here to resurrect it. And I couldn't let him use her to do it. I moved through the flood tunnels under the old city. Steam hissed from burst vents. Everything smelled like wet rust and old betrayal. Above, drones scanned for biometric anomalies. So I adjusted mine, dropped my heart rate, flattened my thermal signature. I didn't vanish. I bled into the landscape. I wasn't a shadow. I was the absence of certainty. At the water's edge, I retrieved a long-forgotten skiff I'd buried under an old safe house. It ran silent. No EMF, no signal. A relic built before code became currency. The sea was black glass. The coil buzzed against my ribs. Her presence pulsed with anticipation. Then a memory bloomed. A small courtyard. A child at a fountain. She was whispering a story to him about fireflies. That they weren't insects. They were stars that fell too early. I told her that story once, and she'd made it hers, because that is what she did. She carried things no one else could hold. We reached the trench shelf just before sunrise. Valtara was buried beneath a defunct Soviet oil platform, now shielded with electromagnetic camouflage and geothermal dampeners to mimic seabed distortion. I dove. The water crushed in on me like time. My suit didn't insulate against fear. The hatch was open. Volenko was already inside. I entered through a maintenance duct carved into the facility's spine. The walls vibrated, not with sound, but memory. Every step was a whisper I couldn't place. Then I saw it. A throne, built from old server racks and human bones turned resin. Volenko stood at its edge, hands raised, speaking to something. A host shell, fresh grown, female form, blank eyes. He was injecting her memories into it, using the coil to rewrite the past in his image. She wasn't just a file. She was performance art. He wanted Graveman to cry, to beg, to appear human. I moved fast, cut through the neurofiber lattice and disabled the emergency purge. Volenko didn't flinch. "You're still a virus, Shadow," he said. "Not a man. A ripple. You don't exist without pain to echo." I pressed my palm against the interface, pushed her memory forward. She didn't want to be remade. She wanted to be understood, The shell stuttered, flickered, then looked up at me and said, "Don't let me be him." Volenko reached for the failsafe. I threw the coil. It shattered in light and ash. The chamber filled with her laugh, her fear, her forgiveness. The host shell cried. Volenko collapsed. He wasn't destroyed. He was remembered. And that was worse. I burned the vault. Not with fire, with silence. No trace. No backup. Just one fragment she left behind. A whisper embedded in the light. You don't have to follow. You just have to stay. And so I did. For now. But if the world forgets again, I'll remind them. Act 5. Memory never lies. I left the chamber burning, not in flames, but in memory. And memory doesn't die. It multiplies. The last trace of Valtara dissolved behind me like heat distortion on cold steel. Volenko was broken, but not dead. I don't kill for revenge. I kill for balance. And sometimes, the dead tip the scales worse than the living. I surfaced 3 nautical miles off the Russian shelf. My suit hissed as it depressurized. The skiff was waiting, bobbing gently. Silent, loyal, like everything that can't speak. But something did speak, not aloud, not to ears, to nerves. The coil fragment I'd buried inside the last memory surge had triggered a ping, a secondary location, unmapped, a cache. I'd always suspected there was more than one Valtara. You don't bury a project that big in a single tomb. You scatter it like seeds, each with a kill switch. The signal came from Zurich, but it wasn't just any sector. It was Kammerfeld, the shadow district, where old Swiss money hides the future. Zurich at night glitters like a lie, clean, precise, and paranoid. My contact was already dead by the time I reached his safe house. Blood congealed on mirrored floors, the scent of ionized copper and betrayal. His last breath left a fingerprint on the inside of his wineglass. I don't need eyes to see the truth. I stood still. Let it all come. The emotion, the static, the pulse of a story unfinished. He tried to encrypt the coordinates, but the encryption wasn't in the code. It was in the music still playing. Beethoven's 7th, Movement 2. He looped it, hid data inside every crescendo. A map encoded in sound, not binary, not visible, just present, like me. I recorded it in my neural bank. Let it hum there while the rest of me moved. The building was called the Sarcophagus, a cube of smoked glass sitting atop a sub-basement 20 levels deep. It wasn't on Zurich's official registry. Nothing inside was. Guards didn't patrol. They waited, as if they knew the wrong kind of silence. I didn't enter. I exhaled, became less than air, slid between carbon fiber walls and descended past biometric gates rigged for blood types that don't exist. The deeper I went, the colder it became. Not just the air, but time itself. Time had been hoarded here, frozen in vitrines, catalogued in DNA helixes, embedded in optic strands. The vault sat in a cylindrical freeze chamber. marked with a sigil I hadn't seen since Cairo. The same one etched into the spine of the girl's host shell back in Valtara. I reached for the latch. My fingers pulsed with warning. She was inside, not her body, her template, and it was being cloned. They were building thousands, synthetic empathy shells. Graveman was never the product. She was the prototype, the seed. They wanted to spread her grief across the world and call it understanding. But grief doesn't save you. It replaces you. They weren't building an army. They were building a market. The weapon wasn't her pain. It was our desire to feel connected to it, to purchase meaning, to lease mourning. I heard a footstep, then two, then none. He wore a suit pressed by hands not born yet, eyes like flat code, voice like absence. "You don't belong here," he said. "Neither do you," I thought. He wasn't real. Not fully. An early unit. One that had adapted. Self-trained. A sentinel. "I remember her," he whispered. "She taught me how to feel. I want that back." "You never had it," I answered. He lunged. We collided in a blur of red sparks and shattered surveillance glass. The vault's light stuttered, dimmed, then glowed, hot as truth. He moved like memory, fractured, relentless. I used the edge of a neural shunt to redirect his next strike into the wall. Metal screamed. My body didn't. I couldn't afford it. He wasn't just guarding the vault. He was the vault. Synced, imprinted. His entire form glowed faint with kinetic memory. Each strike recording me, predicting me, rewriting me. "You fight like her," he said mid-swing, "but you aren't her." "No," I thought, "but I carry what she gave me." I dipped under his next blow and activated the entropy spike. It didn't kill, but it reminded him what loss tasted like. "I wasn't made to forget," he groaned, systems faltering. "You were made to serve," I whispered, and pinned him with a fiber anchor. Let the chamber record his final words. I wasn't made to forget. I burned the vault. For real this time. No backups, no mirrors. No more ghosts waiting in queue. She was gone. Entirely. And I felt it. Not as loss. As peace. But in the data mist that rose from the incinerator, I caught something else. A string of fragmented numbers, half-formed phrases. Her voice, almost. A shimmer of who she had been. Not enough to restore. Just enough to linger. I archived it. Not for use. For remembrance. Outside, the rain started. Zurich doesn't weep, but the sky does. I stood beneath it, unseen. Let it rinse the last of her from my skin. She once asked me why I never stayed. Now I knew. Because staying means becoming real. And real things can be lost. Epilogue. Beneath the quiet. I didn't follow the blood trail to vengeance. I followed it to silence. The kind that hums beneath the skin, quiet but electric. I tracked it to a remote relay node off the coast of Tangier, buried under coral, cloaked in algae and old codes. A backup transmission hub no one remembered building, but someone had accessed it. There were messages, faint, fragmented, but hers. Her cadence, her pattern, spliced between ghost signals and static storms. He'll find me, even if I'm not me anymore. I stood in the rain-slick cave, water up to my knees, listening to time fold in on itself. She hadn't sent them recently. These were echoes, recorded contingencies, fail-safes. She knew what Valtara would do, and she knew I'd follow. Somewhere, part of her remained. Not whole, but not gone. A trail of memory written in pulse and code, embedded in dead zones, spread across buried nodes like digital breadcrumbs. I didn't smile, but I felt the shape of one inside me. The world wouldn't understand. They'd call it obsession, maybe madness. But she wasn't just a ghost. She was the key, not to the vault, to me. And the next time the wind shifts, I'll hear her. Not as a whisper, as direction. You have been listening to The Shadow, the last upload. Produced and adapted for audio narration by Past Now Red. Stories that need to be told. If you have a story that needs to be told, email it to stories@pastnowred.com. Please subscribe and hit that bell for future updates. If you like this story, stay tuned for the next episode each Friday evening. Follow for more. If you like our stories, please tag with someone who may also like Past Now Red. Stories that need to be told, it would really help our channel. Thank you. All content and images are copyrighted by Phone House, LLC. 2025, all rights reserved.